My name is Steve Moore, and I'm the business manager for Atlas Plastics. I recently celebrated my 32nd birthday, and I've been married to the love of my life, Kay, for 8.5 years. Together, we're raising 2 boys, Danny, who's 6, and Kenny, who's 7, and we've settled into a spacious home in a suburb of Atlanta. Our weekends often revolve around barbecues and parties with a close-knit circle of friends who live nearby. When Kay and I first got married, I had a group of buddies I hung out with, but she wasn't fond of them. They weren't as polished as our current friends and didn't care much about material possessions like the cars we drove or the size of our homes. They were a fun-loving bunch who always had each other's backs. When Kay decided we needed to move to a more upscale neighborhood, we had our first major argument. Our previous home was only a short 15-minute commute from work, and our mortgage payments were manageable. I'm what you might call a laid-back guy. I don't place much value on material things, while Kay constantly seeks something better. So when she insisted we move, I initially pushed back for about a week, but eventually I thought, what the heck? I realized most things aren't worth a heated argument: cars, houses, clothes. They're all just material possessions in the grand scheme of life. So when Kay continued to press the issue, I decided to let her take the lead. It simply wasn't worth the energy to fight. You might think I'm being a pushover, but I can count on one hand how many significant arguments Kay and I have had in the last 8 years, until last night, that is. Kay works at a local interior design studio owned by one of our neighbors. She keeps a flexible schedule, working from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., so she can drop the kids off at school and be home when they return. My hours are a bit more rigid, generally from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., and I usually get home around 5:45, depending on traffic. Back when we lived in our old place, I'd typically be home by 5:15 with a drink in hand. But Tuesday night was different. An accident in the driveway delayed me, and I arrived home close to 6:15. A bit tense, I reminded myself that I was finally home and could relax with my wife. I sneaked out the back door and headed upstairs to change into shorts and an old t-shirt. As I descended the stairs toward the kitchen, I overheard Kay talking on the phone. "Don't worry, Laura. You know Steve. He'll agree with everything I say," I heard her say. "No, he won't get mad. I know my husband better than you do. I've thought this through and plan to talk to him tonight after dinner. Yeah, I'll call you later." Curiosity piqued. I turned the corner and asked, "What do we need to talk about?" I startled her a bit as I entered the kitchen. "Steve, you scared me," Kay exclaimed. I pressed, "What do we need to discuss that should wait until after dinner?" I grabbed a beer from the fridge and took a seat at the kitchen table. "Let's just wait until after dinner, when the boys go upstairs," she replied. I felt a twinge of anxiety. What did they do this time? I talked to them about the cart and told them not to hit golf balls in the backyard. What else could they have done since Saturday night? "It's not about the boys, it's about us," she said, her voice steady. "Well, I haven't done anything wrong since I grabbed your ass at Frank's Grill last Friday night, and I only did that because you looked so hot in those new jeans. What did you buy this time?" I asked, attempting to lighten the mood. "That's not what I'm talking about. It's about how we treat each other," she began. "Kay, you know I love you, and I know you love me. So what's the issue?" "Yes, Steve, you know I love you," she said, taking my hands in hers, "but I'm not sure I still love you." "What? I don't understand, Kay," I said, my heart racing. "I don't like where the conversation is going. If you have something to say, just say it." "You're the best and most caring husband in the world, and a wonderful father," she said, caressing my cheek. "But I'm just not sure I feel the same way about you as I did when we got married." Her expression was grave. "I'm thinking about a trial separation to figure out how I feel." I was taken aback. "When did this happen? Before or after we kissed goodbye this morning?" I asked, my mind racing with confusion. The tension hung thick in the air. I could sense the shift in our relationship, the unsettling transition from love to something darker. I had been mulling over our issues for a while, but didn't want to vocalize them until I was certain of my own feelings. "I don't understand. Where do you want to go with this?" I pressed, feeling my frustration bubbling beneath the surface. "Well, I'm considering having you move in with your mother for a while," she suggested, as if she were explaining something simple to a child. "Ever since your father passed, she's been rattling around in that big house all alone. Maybe she needs some company." Her words ignited a spark of anger within me, but I fought to keep my composure. "How are you going to pay for the house and everything else if I leave?" I asked, knowing full well the answer to that question. As the conversation unfolded, the line between love and hate became painfully blurred, leaving me grappling with emotions I never thought I'd face in my marriage. As I approached the dark reality of our situation, Kay's voice, soft yet firm, cut through the tension in the room. "You'll still have to pay, but it won't be forever. Just until I get a chance to work something out," she said, her tone dripping with a mix of affection and exasperation. I stood up, feeling the heat of disbelief rise within me. "No!" I shot back, my voice rising in protest. Kay blinked at me in surprise, confusion clouding her features. "What do you mean, no?" she asked, clearly taken aback. "Kay, what the hell don't you understand? I'm not moving in with my mum, and I'm not leaving my house or my 2 sons." If this was Kay's idea of a mature conversation, she was sorely mistaken. "If you need to leave and clear your head, then go ahead," I replied, my words dripping with frustration. "But I don't want you here either, if you don't love me anymore, as you so eloquently put it." I was furious, and I felt a wave of resentment crash over me. "Since I'm such a great guy, I'll even help you get ready," I said, slamming my beer down on the table before storming up the stairs to our bedroom. Kay looked utterly stunned, her expression a mix of shock and disbelief. When I came back downstairs with an armful of her clothes from the closet, I could see the realization dawn on her. "Put these in the car," I instructed, throwing the garments onto the living room couch. "I'll be down with the next load in a minute." I jogged back upstairs, adrenaline fueling my every move. As I descended with another handful of clothes, Kay's voice rose in panic. "Stop! I thought you wanted a separation," she yelled, her frustration boiling over. "I'm just helping you move your stuff out, that's all," I responded calmly, though my patience was wearing thin. It was at that moment that I crossed the line from love to something darker, anger, resentment, maybe even hatred. "I want you to leave," she shouted, her voice shaking with emotion. "That's not going to happen, Kay. This is my home too. I haven't done anything to you or the kids that would justify kicking me out. If you want to go down to the basement, I can put your stuff there," I replied, tossing the second load of clothes onto the pile. This wasn't at all how Kay had envisioned this situation unfolding. She had expected me to back down, to tuck my tail between my legs and walk away in silence. Instead, I stood my ground, and now she was left scrambling for a plan. "Let's talk about this like 2 adults, Steve," she pleaded, but I could see that the conversation had already veered off course. "Kay, I think you've said enough. At least now I know how you really feel about me. So make up your mind where. Do you want to put your clothes? You're definitely not staying in my bedroom anymore." I tried my best to remain calm, even as the storm of emotions swirled around us. Just then, our sons, Danny and Kenny, burst through the door, their innocent faces painted with confusion. "What's going on?" they asked. "Mom just moved some of her stuff, that's all," I explained, attempting to keep things light. "How about we grab some hamburgers and let her finish up?" I didn't have to ask twice. The boys were eager to escape the charged atmosphere, and we headed out to grab some food. When we returned about 45 minutes later, though, the scene had shifted dramatically. Standing in our living room were 2 police officers, their presence unexpected and unwelcome. "What can I do for you?" I asked, stepping out of the car while motioning for my sons to head inside. "We received a call about a domestic dispute, and we need to talk to you," the taller officer said, his hand hovering near his gun as if he expected trouble. "Officer, you won't need that," I replied, keeping my voice steady. I explained the situation, emphasizing that I hadn't raised my voice or threatened Kay or the kids. "This is my house. My name's on the mortgage, and I pay the bills. Unless there's a court order, which I highly doubt, I have every right to be here. If she's unhappy, she can move out, and I'll help her pack," I stated firmly. Both officers chuckled, seemingly amused by my predicament. They turned to Kay, who was fuming, her face flushed with anger. They informed her that there was nothing they could do in this situation, but they would file a report noting that I was calm and not a danger to my family or myself. Kay, on the other hand, unleashed a tirade of profanity and accusations, clearly rattled by their presence. All I wanted was to help my wife load her personal belongings into the car. That was it. After the officers left, I shook their hands, thanking them for their time. They wished me luck, and as they walked away, I could feel Kay's anger radiating off her like a heat wave. "Steve, why don't you just leave and make things easier for all of us?" she shouted, her voice dripping with frustration. "Like I said, Kay, that's not going to happen. So decide where you want to put your stuff in the car or in the basement. It's your choice. The boys and I are going to eat on the deck, so think carefully about what you want to do next, I replied, grabbing my food and stepping out onto the deck where Danny and Kenny were waiting. What happened to Mom? They asked, their voices filled with concern. Who knows? Maybe she had a bad day at work. Let's give her some space. You know your mum. She'll be back to her old self soon, I said, trying to convince myself as much as them. We ate together, watching a special on the X Games being held in Atlanta, but my mind was elsewhere. After a while, I sent the boys upstairs to settle in, telling them I would check on them later. I decided to look for Kay, but she was gone, leaving her clothes piled on the couch where I had left them. I climbed upstairs and noticed a few drawers pulled out and her 2 suitcases missing. Well, I guess that answers that, I muttered to myself as I sat on the bed, feeling the weight of the evening settle in. At 7:15 a.m., I had left for work with a loving wife and a happy family, but now at 9 p.m., all I had were my 2 sons and an empty home. Life felt like a cruel joke. In a moment of desperation, I called my mom. "Mum, I need a big favor," I said, pouring out my story and asking if she could help make sure the boys got to school on time and were home when they returned. Maybe Kay's just dealing with some hormones. She'll probably come back once she realizes what a mess she's made of things. I speculated, but even as I said it, doubt crept in. "I'll be there in the morning," my mum assured me, but her confidence did little to ease my own uncertainty. Wednesday and Thursday came and went, and Kay didn't return. On Thursday afternoon, she called the boys to say hello, but she didn't bother to speak to me. I was still an idiot in her eyes, I guessed. By Saturday morning, a mix of concern and anger bubbled inside me. You have no one to blame but yourself. I chastised myself. If you hadn't been such a pushover all these years, she would never have tried to kick you out of your own home. I imagined Kay sulking at her parents' house, telling everyone how insensitive I was, oblivious to my own feelings and needs. Life had become a confusing mess, and all I wanted was clarity in the chaos. "I'm done with this," I muttered, surveying the oversized house that felt more like a burden than a home for the 4 of us. "It's just too damn big." Laura's sister stopped by that Sunday afternoon to gather a few things for her. "Hey, Laura," I greeted her at the door, trying to keep the mood light despite the tension hanging in the air. "I bet you're here to pick up some new clothes for her." She grinned knowingly. "Of course. You know it's all about Kay." I shrugged, feeling a mix of frustration and resignation. "I told her you'd send her to get some, but she insisted you'd understand her better than I do. Clearly, she was mistaken. I should have put my foot down a long time ago, but I didn't want to stir up any family drama." "Any idea when she'll be back?" I asked, half hoping for a sign of improvement. "Not a clue," Laura's sister replied, shaking her head. "She's still in her poor me phase. Mum's ready to kick her out if she doesn't get it together, but you know how Dad Ishi's little girl can do no wrong. Want to stay for dinner? We've got grilled chicken, baked potatoes, and corn on the cob," I offered, trying to salvage the evening. "Sure, let me just pack up her things and we'll sort it out," she said, a smile breaking through the heaviness of the day. The boys were thrilled to see Laura, and we all enjoyed a warm dinner together. As the evening wore on, her phone buzzed with messages from Kay, demanding to know where she was, but Laura didn't respond. By the time we cleaned up, it was nearing 8 o'clock. "I'd better head out," Laura said. "Thanks for dinner. It was nice to see a friendly face for a change. If you need anything, just call me," I told her, my mind swirling with thoughts about Kay. She's ruining a good marriage, but all her friends are telling her to stand her ground, convinced I'll come around eventually. But that's not happening. "Am I right?" Laura asked. "Absolutely. But you should go before you get dragged into any more trouble," I replied, and she hugged me tightly, pressing a kiss to my cheek as she left. I married the wrong sister, I mumbled to myself as the door clicked shut behind her. The following 3 weeks were a blur of challenges. Mom helped with the kids, but Kay refused to speak to me, though she bombarded me with long emails, guilt-tripping me about my lack of support. The surprising twist. I wasn't invited to neighborhood gatherings anymore, but Kay was. It felt like the lines had been drawn, and the kids were the first to notice, repeatedly asking when Mum would be back. "I'm not sure, guys," I said, trying to keep it together. "It's really up to her. I'm not holding her back. She's choosing this path." One Saturday morning, while grocery shopping with my sons, life began to shift in unexpected ways. As I strolled down the aisle, someone lifted me off the ground from behind. "Look who it is, you're such a whipped loser. You probably stroke her ego too," came a familiar voice, playfully taunting me. "Wow, if this is your idea of lifting me up, you've really let yourself go." I laughed, recognizing Randy, an old friend. "What the hell are you doing here?" "Just checking in on you, man. I thought you'd vanished with that big house of yours," he replied with a smirk. "Too good for you?" "Nah, just didn't want to deal with your drama," I said, hugging him. "Good to see you, though." "See you later," Randy called as he headed off. "Was that Uncle Randy?" my boys asked, wide-eyed. "Yep, now let's hurry. I don't want to be late for this party." As we arrived just after 4:30, Carol greeted us with a warm hug. Her girls grabbed my boys and ran off to play in the backyard. "Where's Kay?" she inquired, sensing the tension. "That's a whole different story," I replied, feeling the weight of the situation. "Well, I'm glad you and the boys are here. Everyone will be excited to see you," Carol said, leading us inside. The evening unfolded beautifully, filled with laughter and camaraderie. As the night wound down and the guests departed, Randy and I settled into a quieter space. They pressed me for details about Kay and me, and I found myself shaking my head, lost in confusion. We never fought. Hell, we never even argued. Maybe that's the issue. I let her have her way just to keep the peace. I thought everything was fine, I confessed. "Maybe it's a woman thing?" Carol suggested lightly. "I think it's deeper than that. You can't just tell your husband you love him without truly being in love. It feels empty," I admitted, a sinking realization washing over me. I never considered the possibility of Kay seeing someone else, but now I had to be vigilant. "I'll keep my eyes open and my mouth shut," I thought. "From now on, it's my kids first, me second, and everyone else can take a hike, especially those fair-weather friends." Every Sunday, Laura returned to pick up clothes for Kay, and I found myself looking forward to her visits. It became a routine that brought a flicker of normalcy into the chaos. That Saturday morning, I dropped the boys off at Kay's mother's house, hoping for a chance to talk. But after an explosive argument, I was relieved to just drop them off and leave, avoiding more confrontations on the front lawn. My emotional journey swung between anger and despair, teetering on the edge of hopelessness. It felt like I was stuck in some sort of recovery program, trying to sort through my feelings. I sent Kay weekly emails, pouring out my love and longing for her, hoping for a response that would bridge the gap between us. "Please be patient, my love," she replied one day, acknowledging my pain. "I just want to work through these issues so they don't resurface later. I know this has been tough on you and the boys. Just a little longer." Her words gave me a glimmer of hope. 3 long months later, as I scrubbed dishes one Sunday, Laura delivered news that struck me like a punch to the gut. "Kay went on a date last night, and it wasn't the first time," she said, her eyes avoiding mine. "What?" I was stunned, disbelief flooding over me. "You're kidding." "No, I'm serious," Laura insisted. "I think you should know." I stood frozen, a soapy rag dripping water onto the floor, struggling to process her words. "Did you hear what I said?" she pressed. "She went on a damn date. Say something." I was lost in a whirlwind of emotions, the ground shifting beneath my feet. The reality of our situation hit me harder than ever, and I knew I had to face whatever came next. "Steve, are you even listening to me?" Laura's voice cut through the haze that had clouded my mind. I felt like I was in a trance, frozen in place, grappling with the stark reality of Kay's absence. For the first time, I was forced to confront the possibility that my life without her might not just be a temporary detour. Anger had bubbled up in me, and I had shouted in frustration before, convinced that she would come back and everything would return to normal. But now, doubt crept in like a shadow. "Hey, wake up! Your damn wife is out there somewhere, and all you can do is stand there looking lost." Laura's frustration was palpable as she tapped my chest, urging me to snap out of it. I reached for her, pulling her into an embrace, and as tears welled in my eyes, I heard her voice quaver. "This isn't fair. You're such a good guy, and she's just using you. It's not right," she said, holding me tightly. Her words resonated with the pain I felt. It wasn't just unfair. It was infuriating. With a surge of emotion, I hurled a rag against the wall. "Damn it!" I shouted, causing my kids to rush into the room. "Dad, what's going on?" they asked, concern etched on their young faces. I quickly fabricated an excuse. Aunt Laura slipped on the floor and banged her knee, that's all, I said, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy. Remember, we still have a movie to watch, and we're waiting for you. They returned to the living room, and I sat with Laura on the couch, the flickering light of the projector illuminating our faces. My boys settled in front of the screen, eager for yet another viewing of Spider-Man 3. I'd seen it twice, and they'd probably watched it at least 6 times. As the movie played, silence enveloped us, a shared understanding of the tension lingering in the air. "I'm sorry," Laura whispered, squeezing my hand. I felt like I was in a fog, mentally preparing for what came next. Not revenge, but self-preservation. After the movie, I tucked the kids into bed and walked Laura to the door. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice filled with genuine concern. "No," I admitted, "but I'll live." She kissed me gently on the cheek. "Call me if you need anything or just want to talk," she said, stepping outside. As the door clicked shut, a wave of determination washed over me. "She's an idiot," Laura had said. It was true. Kay's decisions were leaving a path of destruction, and I was tired of being collateral damage. I took a deep breath, ready to reclaim my life. The next day, I dropped the kids off at school and sat down at my computer. First, I tackled our finances. I paid off our 2 Visa credit cards, closing the accounts immediately. Then, I transferred half of what was left in our joint account to a new account in my name only. The bank told me it would take 6 business days to fully remove my name from our existing accounts. Next, I called the HR department at work and removed Kay from my life insurance, $401k, and health benefits. I even changed the locks on the house and reset the security codes. Each small step felt liberating. With a newfound sense of control, I went to the mall and cancelled my cell phone plan, which cost me an extra $250, then signed up for a new plan under my name alone. I couldn't help but smile at the thought of Kay trying to call her old number. It was the first genuine smile I'd worn in ages. I kept the home phone number the same, but left a message on the answering machine for Kay to call her parents. "Kids, I need your old house keys," I announced when they rushed in. "I've changed the locks. Here are your new keys," I said, handing them each a fresh key and tossing the old ones into the trash. "It's done," I told myself. In just 8 hours, I had transitioned from a happy husband to a single parent. That evening, the house phone rang. I instructed the kids to put it on the answering machine. "What the hell are you doing, Stephen Moore? My cell phone isn't working and neither of my credit cards. I need you to call me right now." Kay's voice was sharp, laced with anger. It had only taken me 8 hours to push her to this point, and over 3 months to lose her. When Laura called, she said she was on her way to pick us up for dinner. "Grab the kids, we're going out," she instructed, her energy infectious. "What's the rush?" I asked. "Your parents are coming over to have a serious talk with you. If you don't want to hear that, come with me." We ended up at Sonny's barbecue, and the food was fantastic. For a while, we laughed and enjoyed ourselves, but I could feel the weight of my decisions hanging in the air. "You know I changed the locks, right?" I asked Laura. "I figured as much when I heard you cancelled her credit cards and cell phone," she replied with a knowing smile. "She sure knows how to spend." "Yeah, well, every dad wants to protect his little girl Evan when they're wrong," I said with a sigh. "So, what's your plan?" she inquired, raising an eyebrow. "Honestly, I'm going to list that monstrous house for sale. I've loathed it from the start, and even if we somehow reconcile, I want it gone." "But you can't sell without her consent," Laura reminded me gently. "I know, but once that for sale sign goes up, the neighborhood will buzz with gossip." I grinned, imagining the stir it would cause. 3 hours later, we returned home, and as I tucked the boys in, they asked, "Are you and Mum getting a divorce?" I hesitated. "We asked Mum and she said no, but she doesn't live here anymore. I can't say yes or no right now. You know your mum and I love you both very much, but I don't think she wants to live with me anymore. So, we'll just have to wait and see what she decides." I kissed them goodnight, assuring them everything would be all right. Afterwards, I poured a beer and offered one to Laura as we sat at the kitchen table. "You know you can't hide forever, right?" she said, breaking the silence. "I'm not trying to hide," I replied. "She knows where I live and work. It won't be hard for her to find me." Sure enough, Thursday at work, Kay stormed into my office. "How dare you cancel my credit cards and cell phone? When did you change the locks on the house?" Her fury was palpable. "Hey Kay, you look good, how are you?" I greeted her calmly. Fine. The boys really miss you not being around, I added. Yeah, I've lost a few pounds. Thanks for noticing, she retorted, her irritation simmering just beneath the surface. As we talked, I felt a mix of frustration and relief. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. I was ready to reclaim my life. What on earth are you talking about? She finally asked, her voice trembling with frustration. You're answering questions I should be asking after almost 4 months of silence between us. If you want to sit down and talk, fine. But if you're just going to yell and scream, then I'm going to have to ask you to leave. This is a business office, after all. Why did you do all of this last week? Why did you start dating someone else? Aren't we still married? Or am I missing something here? I pressed, my heart racing. It was just dinner with a friend. That's all it was, she replied coolly. Did you sleep with him? I asked, unable to mask the urgency in my tone. No, I didn't sleep with him. It was just dinner. I told you, she insisted, irritation flaring in her eyes. Are you planning to sleep with him? I shot back. Steve, why are you asking me all these questions? She countered, her brow furrowing. I just need to understand what's going on with my life, with my schedule, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. What's your schedule? Kay asked, her tone cutting through the tension like a knife. The reason for the divorce, I replied, watching her face fall in shock. I don't want a divorce. Damn it, she shouted back, her voice echoing in the sterile office. Well, your actions say otherwise. Dating, ignoring your husband and kids, buying new underwear for someone else, those are all signs that you're moving on without us. They still send credit card bills to the house, so I know what you're buying. I just don't know who it's for, I told her, frustration bubbling to the surface. I've told you 100 times I don't want a divorce. I just need some time to myself, she insisted, her voice rising again. For the 10th time, how much time, Kay? How much more do you need? I asked, my patience waning. I don't know. How can I answer that when I don't know? She replied, exasperated. Well, when you find out, please let me know. But it better be soon if you want to try to save this marriage, I said, standing up. I still have work to do, and I have a meeting in 20 minutes. She leaned in to kiss me goodbye, but I turned away, the distance between us palpable. Her disappointment was clear, but she didn't say a word. Laura, do you want to go to the party on Saturday night? I asked, trying to shift my thoughts. Sure, where? She replied, her curiosity piqued. Just meet us at the house at 6. Dress casually, I instructed. Randy and the band were throwing a big adults-only party, and I didn't want to go alone. As we arrived, I realized we were among the last to get there. I thought you said 6:30, I remarked, looking at my watch. Randy, Hank, and Ted had shown up at 5:30, firing up the smoker while the women prepared potato salad and baked beans. By the time I blinked, the party was already in full swing. Don't blame me, I announced, introducing everyone to Laura. Let's get this party started. I opened a couple of beers for us as the atmosphere buzzed with laughter and chatter. Randy leaned in, nudging me playfully. So Kay's little sister, huh? Is she good in bed? Are you out of your mind? She's my sister-in-law, I retorted, shaking my head. One of these days, Randy, you really need to pull your head out of your ass. The party was a blast, reminiscent of old times. Beer flowed, and the women gathered, sharing stories and complaints about their men. Occasionally I glanced over at Laura. She was clearly enjoying the socializing, her laughter ringing out above the noise. As dinner wrapped up, we moved on to some party games. First, there was a round of 20 questions, 10 for the guys and 10 for the women. Anyone who got an answer wrong had to take a swig of beer. It seemed harmless, but by the end of the night, many of us were feeling pretty tipsy. I was shocked when Laura aced 9 questions about me, while I barely scraped by with 3. She knew me better than I had realized. Next, we passed items between pairs. The easier tasks were simple enough, but when it came to the spoon and shot glass, I failed miserably. Through the laughter and the body contact, I got to know Laura in ways I hadn't expected. She was surprisingly nimble, while I fumbled and stumbled, taking sip after sip of beer. By the end of the night, the world around me was spinning, and I felt pleasantly numb. Let me help you get him to the car, Randy offered to Laura as he staggered slightly. I hadn't seen him this drunk in ages, but it seemed like he needed it tonight. Do you want me to walk you home and help you put him to bed? No, that won't be necessary, but thanks for offering. He has a guest room downstairs, and if I can't get him upstairs, I'll just leave him there, Laura replied, making her way toward my house. As the clock ticked toward 3 in the morning, my bladder finally protested. It seemed impossible to drink all that beer without paying the price. I swung my legs over the edge of the bed, my head throbbing like a drum. I stumbled toward the bathroom, navigating around furniture in a daze. It was only when I reached for my shorts that I realized I wasn't wearing any. Wobbling slightly, I opted for the more stable option and sat down. A couple of moments later, still half drunk, I waddled back to bed. As I settled in beside my wife, I breathed in the familiar scent of her hair and kissed her shoulder. We lay there, the weight of the night slipping away, and I felt a stirring desire. There was no way she would want to fool around at a time like this, I thought, recalling how she sometimes got annoyed even when I tried to kiss her awake. But with my eyes still closed, I felt her shift against me, a subtle push that ignited something inside. For the next 10 minutes we moved in silent rhythm, our breathing quickening as we lost ourselves in each other. There were no loud cries, no rough movements, just soft caresses and gentle whispers in the dark. I wrapped my arms around her, holding her close as we drifted off into a peaceful sleep. When the light of morning seeped through the windows, I awoke with a pounding headache and a dry mouth that tasted like a bad hangover. As I pulled her closer, I realized I needed to get to the bathroom. "I'll be back in a second," she murmured, leaping up and sprinting toward the bathroom, her bare skin glowing in the early light. As she brushed her teeth and rinsed her mouth, Laura playfully leaped back onto our bed. "If you're expecting any action this morning, you might want to hit the bathroom first," she teased, laughing. "I can smell your breath from here." I chuckled, still feeling the weight of last night's drinks and exhaustion clouding my thoughts. Okay, I replied, knowing I was barely functioning. But her laughter sparked something in me. It was a reminder of a connection I hadn't felt in months. I was still grappling with my breakup with Kay, who had been gone for over 4 months. I took a moment, sitting up and locking eyes with Laura. "I guess if you need something from me, you better be quick. Remember, we promised Mum we'd pick up the kids after lunch," she reminded me, a hint of urgency in her voice. With a gentle push, she kicked me out of bed as I headed to the bathroom. I caught a glimpse of Laura sitting there, completely naked, her knees drawn up to her chest, arms wrapped around them. For a split second, I pinched myself, hoping this wasn't just some wild dream. How had we ended up here? Honestly, when you came over last night, you were pretty tipsy. I managed to get you inside, but as we climbed the stairs, you slipped and pulled me down with you. You thought it was hilarious, which made me laugh too," Laura began, her smile lighting up her face as she recounted the chaos of the previous night. "You pushed me, I pushed you back, and suddenly we were wrestling on the living room floor. Then you kissed me out of nowhere and I just started chasing you around the house." I interrupted. "But that kiss wasn't exactly just a kiss." Laura smirked. "Well, you certainly made it clear you wanted more. You chased me up to your bedroom and told me to undress. But then I thought, why not make it a game? A couple of minutes later, you were in your underwear, and I figured you were the boxers type." She nudged me playfully as I shifted in my seat, urging her to continue. "So there we were, you in your boxers and me in my panties, and we ended up in bed. I thought you'd be out cold in no time, but I guess I was wrong." "One thing led to another," I said, trying to wrap my head around what had just happened. "What do you mean, almost?" Laura laughed, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Well, you came at me with kisses and hands everywhere. I had no idea you could be such a, how should I put it, a passionate guy. Kay never mentioned that side of you. Why didn't you stop?" I hesitated. "Your sister, for crying out loud." Laura rolled her eyes, a playful grin on her face. "Look, Steve, Kay has been dating someone else for at least a month. You deserve some payback. Besides, I've always had a crush on you. And let me tell you, I wasn't disappointed." I shook my head, still in disbelief. "So what? We actually—" "Let's just say it was a memorable night," she replied, her smile wide. "You were pretty drunk, and we almost went all the way, but you were too out of it to even remember. Why didn't you just leave afterward?" I asked, trying to process everything. "I thought about it," she admitted, "but I was tired, and I figured you'd sleep till noon. How could I have known you'd want seconds at 4 in the morning? I tried to argue, "But Kay is your sister." "Yeah, the same sister who I once knew and cared for deeply," Laura said, leaning in to kiss me softly. "Now get up. We still need to shower and get the kids." Our shower turned into a long, playful session, but soon the water began to cool. Reluctantly, we stepped out, the fun temporarily on hold. As we sat down for breakfast, I knew I had to make a serious decision. Laura, I don't think we should continue this. I'm still married and Kay is your sister. She looked disappointed but nodded. Steve, I'll keep this quiet, but how long do you plan to keep up this charade? You need to decide. This weekend, I replied firmly. If Kay isn't back by Saturday, I'll see a lawyer. I'm not telling the kids anything yet. Mom is picking them up out of town after school on Friday. I'll at least have an answer by then. Laura's expression shifted, and I could see she was worried about the outcome. We picked up the kids later that day, and our evening was quiet, almost strained, until Laura said she had to leave. As I walked her to her car, I wrapped my arms around her for a moment. When I leaned in for a kiss, I felt a rush of confusion and longing as she drove away. That night, I wrote a letter to Kay. It was direct and to the point. Unless you're ready to come back and be my wife and the mother our kids deserve, I'm calling it quits. Time is running out. It's time to make a decision. On Tuesday night, Kay called, announcing she was coming home. She said she'd left on Friday and wanted to talk all night. I felt a mix of excitement and dread. The week dragged on, filled with calls from both Kay and Laura. Kay was ecstatic to be home, and I sensed Laura's conflicting emotions as she wished us both the best. When I got home Friday night, Kay was waiting for me, a glass of wine in hand. I pulled her into an embrace, and our kiss felt strange after 4 long months apart. We shared dinner and talked for hours, both of us aware of the looming conversation we were avoiding. As I lay in bed waiting for her, she emerged from the bedroom completely naked. My heart raced. She was stunning, and all I could think about was how much I desired her. We made love tenderly, just as we had for the past 8 years. But something felt different. Kay, that wasn't lovemaking, I said, searching her eyes. I know your body just as well as mine. Who were you thinking about? She paused, the realization dawning on her. I don't know what you mean. Kay, this isn't just about us. How long has this affair been going on? Please don't insult my intelligence by saying it was only 6 months. Her silence spoke volumes, and I knew we were on the brink of a much deeper conversation. A long time ago, Kay's voice trembled as she spoke. A look of horror etched across her face. In other words, the real reason you left was to be with him. Is that true? It started out that way, I admitted, the weight of my words hanging in the air. I needed to be alone to figure out what I truly wanted. So you've been sleeping with him all these months, and now you expect to waltz back into my life like nothing happened, like I should just say, "It's okay, honey, I'm just glad you're back." The hurt in my voice cut deeper than I intended. Steve, did you fool around with anyone else while I was gone? Kay asked, her eyes narrowing. What does that have to do with this? I countered, trying to keep my anger in check. We're discussing the fact that you've had a lover for the past 6 months. I just want to know how much of a fool you really are, she shot back. Okay, Kay, I did slip once, I confessed, feeling the room shrink around us. But unlike you, I was drunk and didn't find out until the morning after. I got out of bed, the crisp sheets feeling foreign against my skin. Now that I know what kind of lies I'm married to, I can finally make the hard decisions I've been putting off all this time. Steve, I'm back with you. It's over. I made a huge mistake, and I own up to it. I'm not proud of what I did, but I'm asking you to give me another chance. I love you, and I'm begging you to help me make our family whole again. Kay's plea hung in the air, heavy with desperation. What the hell was I supposed to say? I thought, grappling with my emotions. No? I need time to think? Kay, I can't sleep next to you right now. I'm furious. Just tell me it wasn't one of our friends or someone I work with, I demanded, my heart racing. It was someone I met through work, and it's over, she replied, her voice trembling. For the next 2 nights I stayed in the guest room, the loneliness pressing down on me. We talked extensively over the weekend. Kay told me I could ask her anything, and she would answer truthfully. I didn't want the sordid details, but I needed to understand. Why? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. At first it was exciting, she explained. I felt like a rebellious teenager sneaking around. He gave me more attention in a week than you have in the last 2 years. I fell under his spell, but it didn't last long. After a while, it was just about the physical thrill. We both realized it wasn't worth the risk. Neither of us wanted our spouses to find out. So it ended quickly. By Sunday morning, I knew I'd made a mistake and wanted you back. My mind was swirling with problems, and I desperately needed a break. Dinner at her mother's house felt like a step back into normalcy. Kay wrapped herself in a large blanket, and everyone seemed in good spirits, everyone but her mother, Laura, and me. As we left, Laura hugged me tightly, slipping something into my pocket and whispering, "Call me tomorrow." The next 2 weeks were restless. I still slept in the spare room while the kids were thrilled to have their mum back. One Friday afternoon, I left to take care of errands that piled up during the week, turning off my phone to escape any distractions. When I finally powered it back on, I was greeted by a dozen frantic messages from Kay. Just as I sank into the couch with a beer, she stormed through the door, brandishing an envelope. "What the hell is this, Steve?" she shouted, her face a mask of confusion and anger. "It's exactly what it looks like, Kay," I replied calmly. "Why did you serve me? I thought we were going to try again." "We were almost together, but it was just the two of us," I insisted, feeling a mixture of sadness and resolve. "Now, there's no hope for the three of us," I said, watching her expression shift from anger to shock as she sat back down. "I was leaning towards your side because of the kids and the good memories we shared. But 2 weeks ago, something new came to light that put our marriage on hold." "How did you find out?" she asked, panic creeping into her voice. "No one knew." "Does it matter how I found out, Kay? You were planning to play me for a fool and make me believe everything was fine?" "Steve, I'm so sorry," she pleaded, tears streaming down her face. "I don't love him. I love you. We can fix this. He even gave me money to keep quiet, so his wife won't find out." With every word, she was digging her own grave deeper. "I hope you and he will be very happy," I replied coldly. "But I don't want anything from you. I just want you out of my life." She cried throughout the weekend, and when I picked up the kids, we had a long heart-to-heart. They weren't surprised about the breakup, but were understandably upset. After everything was split evenly and bills were settled, I had just enough left over to buy a small house in a friendlier neighborhood. Kay managed her end of things with grace, respecting our unspoken agreement to keep everything quiet. But there was one last piece of the puzzle. The following day, I called Kay's mum, eager to learn about what she had slipped into my pocket that Sunday. "I shouldn't be telling you this, but if I don't, you'll never know the whole truth," she started hesitantly. "I found something in the guest bathroom the morning after Kay moved out. It took me a few days to gather the courage to give it to you." With that, she revealed a pregnancy test discarded in the trash, one that indicated someone was expecting. Since Kay was the only woman living in my house, the implications hit hard. I wasn't prepared for this revelation, but it clarified everything. "I didn't want to be the one to tell you, but I thought Kay might try to manipulate you," her mother added. "You deserve to know the truth." As the reality of the situation sank in, I realized I needed to confront Kay one last time. This would change everything. "I didn't hear it from you, did I?" I said to my mum, my stomach churning with unease. "I hate to say this, but I love her very much." "Don't be a stranger," she said, hanging up the phone, leaving me with a revelation that hit harder than I anticipated. Kay was pregnant. In hindsight, it might have been easier if I had stumbled upon a test kit or a doctor's report, or even followed her to some seedy motel and peered through the windows. But no, it was her own mother who let the cat out of the bag. The house I found was close to the one Kay and I had lived in all those years. It was a spacious 4-bedroom, 2.5-bath home with a large patio, but unfortunately no pool. The boys helped out, and I couldn't have managed without my new assistant, who turned out to be a lifesaver during this tumultuous time. After the divorce was finalized, we all gathered for Thanksgiving dinner at Kay's mum's house. The kids, bubbling with excitement, couldn't contain their joy as they told their mum and grandparents about the new place. "It's so great," Kenny exclaimed. "Danny has his own room, I have my own room, and Dad and Aunt Laura have theirs. Plus, we still have one left for when people come to visit." His eyes sparkled with pride as he mentioned, picking the color of the walls and trim. "Can you say that again?" Kay asked, her voice tightening as she caught on to what was happening. "Sure. There's my room, Danny's room, your room, and someone else's room," he said cheerfully. "Dad and Aunt Laura's," he added, oblivious to the tension. "How long has Aunt Laura been living with you?" Kay pressed, her voice shaking slightly. "Since we moved into the new house," Kenny replied, blissfully munching on his dessert. "Stephen Moore," Kay shouted, her expression a mixture of disbelief and anger. "Looks like someone's discovered our little secret." I caught Laura's eye in the kitchen, and we shared a knowing look. "It was only a matter of time," I said, leaning in to kiss her. "We never told the kids to keep it quiet. and Mom and Dad would have figured it out anyway once they saw my belly. Laura rubbed her stomach with a smile. "Shall we go?" "I'd love to," she replied as we entered the dining room. What unfolded next felt like the shock and awe of the Gulf War. Kay was furious that I was now with her younger sister, while her mum glowed with excitement over the prospect of another grandchild. Her dad, on the other hand, seemed relieved he wouldn't have to adjust to another son-in-law. Meanwhile, Laura and I exchanged glances, brimming with happiness. In retrospect, I think I originally married the wrong sister, but thankfully, I was able to correct that before it was too late. This story unfolds with deep emotions and dramatic twists, captivating from beginning to end. It explores the intricate web of interpersonal relationships, revealing the strength required to make tough life decisions. The unexpected character dynamics and plot developments keep readers engaged, making each turn in the narrative feel fresh and intriguing.